Facebook, will not be on Instagram. All right, thank you all for coming in to the session that we're having this afternoon. This is Be the Ram Media presents A Crucial Conversation. And what we're really trying to have a conversation about is everything that's going on. To act like you don't know what's going on would really be an injustice in itself. So we really want to have a conversation with the panelists that we have up. We have coaches from across the country. We have people that are not coaches. We have all types of influential people that are going to give insight and just really have a conversation about what's going on in our communities, because it affects all of us. If you know that Billy Graham said that a coach will affect in 1 year more people than a normal individual will in a lifetime. And coaches all know that. We really don't, we try not to get into that. When it comes to coaching, we put all that stuff aside. We can work with whoever, whenever, and wherever. So the purpose of this roundtable, the purpose of this summit is to just give insight. Now, if you want to participate via social media, the only thing you have to do to ask a question is use the hashtag crucial conversation, and we'll go and find the questions and answer those. But the way we'll do it is that we're going to begin with a short video to lead into that first question that we're going to tackle, followed by a conversation from the panelists. And what the panelists will do, they'll come on. For instance, they'll say, hello, my name is Cabral Health. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm the head basketball coach at Holy Innocents School. And then they'll kind of give their insight. They'll speak a little bit. And if anyone else wants to tag on, they'll do the same thing. So I appreciate you all for coming on. If you have questions, comments, concerns, make sure that you comment. If you're on Facebook, if you're on Twitter, if you're on any type of social media platform, YouTube, just make sure that you share this link. I think it'll be beneficial, and I think it'll be blessing to others. So we're going to start off with a small video just to kind of get us the ideal of what we're going through.
My argument is this: we're really just battling one problem. America is a tale of two cities. One, the majority; one, the minority. The last 3 months exposed these parallel Americas. Tonight, you see the flames in Minneapolis. For too many in the minority, they illuminate an act of rebellion and catharsis, a show of force when for too long there's only been helplessness, a fight or flight reaction, as you heard, that comes after flying in fear and insecurity they say they feel too often and in too many ways. Now, too many in the majority see lawless actions that offset any underlying act. I speak to the majority here, and I beg you to stop ignoring the pain and profound hurt that lies beneath what you see. Of course, these actions are against law. Of course, they're not what we want to see. But we in the majority cannot allow ourselves to be corrupted by toxic talk about the correct way to express that pain. You can't simplify it to the point of a false equivalence that puts some insured buildings on equal footing with an apparently never-ending pattern of dead, black, young men at the hands of those who are supposed to protect them. Tonight, we see a wrong after a wrong. And yes, two wrongs don't make a right. But if we don't address why we keep ending up here, we'll never make things right. It isn't the rebels lighting fires. It isn't the media exposing the reality. The problem is the reality. Just look at the last 3 months. Forget about policing. Look at the toll of the pandemic. More people of color are getting sick and dying. Why? Less access to care. More minorities are losing their jobs at a faster rate. Yet they make up the higher percentage of those at work right now in jobs deemed essential. Imagine how that feels. Helping more and being helped less. They stand a greater chance, minorities, of getting stopped for wearing and not wearing masks. Those government small business loans, they didn't go evenly to the majority and minority. Most went to the majority. In one America, people rage for the freedom to get a haircut and a tattoo. The other is raging just to be seen and heard. One America says they won't wear a mask because when they jog, it's uncomfortable, not necessary. It's an affront to their liberty. One has renewed fear that going for a jog could get you killed. One America insists their need for football is so sacrosanct, there can be no kneeling protest on the sidelines. Sons of bitches. But is not outraged by a cop kneeling on this man's neck? Doesn't make it okay to riot, says the majority. But doesn't it depend why it's happening? A riot in Boston Harbor started the fight that amounted to America. Cities burned across the continent in 1968, again at Stonewall. In each of those cases, it was the minority manifesting a desperate plea to be heard and for change, just like now. A friend of mine, celebrated American and African American, asked me in a broken voice, why doesn't America love us? Why do they do this to us? And he wasn't just talking about this latest case, he was talking about all of it. And by America, he meant me. He meant you, the white majority. And you can listen to those who put it on the minorities. Violent, outrageous, lazy. They hate the majority. They don't comply with the police. They are the tyrants. Look what they're doing in the streets. You're judging symptoms and you're missing the illness, and you know it. It was Nelson Mandela who said, when a man is denied the right to live the life he believes in, he has no choice but to become an outlaw. And you know this is true. More poverty means more crime, means more interactions with police, means less avenues to dignity, to power, to change, for hope, for respect of the law, and for optimism that drives ambition to live the American dream. Please don't just see the death of George Floyd. See all of it. Yes, this one is on video. And yes, it's so obvious. So that you can say, well, this one I get. It's not just this one. It's that the officers in it seem to be saying, we know it's wrong, and we're going to do it anyway. That's why the minority screams. Not just this video. It's the prosecutions that don't happen, the cases that aren't on video that you don't see, and the prosecutions that do happen of the wrong people, the punishments that are too harsh for the crimes minorities commit. It's the laws that make it harder to vote and easier to be out of a job. So you can listen to those who say, put it on the minority, they're the tyrants. But it's still going to be your problem. You know why? Only the majority can fix it. The minority doesn't have the power. My father joined a generation of leaders from and for the minority, calling out this tale of two cities to you, the majority. And here I am, his son, almost 40 years later, and we have yet to answer the call. A house divided cannot stand. United we stand, divided we fall. E pluribus unum, one out of many. We are all in it together. How many times must we try to teach the same lesson? The pandemic will pass. The case will fade into the others, but our real problems remain. They'll only go away when we finally realize that minority and majority must come together, or America will never be her best.
All right, now we'll have an opening prayer by Pastor Anthony.
Good afternoon. All right, Father God, we just thank you, Lord God, for this opportunity to come together and to strategize, Lord God, and come up with solutions. Lord God, we trust, rely, and depend on you for wisdom, for guidance, and for your words to be a light into our path. Lord God, we thank you, Lord God, that your peace is passed down to us. So the same peace that allowed you to carry on with the crucifixion and carry on with your mission, we obtain and we possess that same peace. And right now, we just declare that peace over this nation right now, Father, over this world. We declare peace be still right now in Jesus' name. And we thank you, Lord God, that you grant everyone on this call the passion, the articulation, and the ideas that can be used to bring about change in the midst of turmoil. We declare so. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So appreciate that. So our first question to start this conversation off, and as I said, anyone can speak up. It's simply, how do you feel? How has this made you feel?
Okay, I guess I'll go first. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is BJ Thomas out of Georgia. I'm the head boys basketball coach at McDonough High School, McDonough, Georgia. And as far as how I feel, I have a mix of emotions. Definitely anger is an emotion. Sadness is an emotion. I think for me, probably the biggest emotion that I feel is frustration, because it seems like we're at this point every year, every 2 years, something like this continues to happen. Some young brother is killed unjustifiably by the police. He's unarmed, he's not a threat, but he's perceived as a threat, and he's gunned down like a dog. And we've seen this happen repeatedly, but it seems like change isn't happening. And one of the things that I am looking at now, with the video you just showed, he kind of referenced Colin Kaepernick. And I saw a post that a white gentleman had put on his Facebook page apologizing to Colin Kaepernick because he kind of sees now what Colin Kaepernick was kneeling for. It's like, well, now I see it, and now I see that the peaceful kneel that all he wanted to do was just kneel on the sideline before a game. And that was too much for us. We didn't want that. And now when you see the protests and you see as a result some rioting and some looting, and now you look back and Kaepernick's kneel seems very tame now. And it's like, well, we wish, we had that now. But, and while I can appreciate his perspective coming to that realization, it's still frustrating that it shouldn't have taken this for you to understand what Colin Kaepernick was trying to do peacefully, what he was trying to say at that time, at that moment. But if it takes this, fine. I think, just as was also mentioned, I think you mentioned earlier, this was so blatant, what happened to George Floyd, that it's undeniable. We had about 5 years ago, you had the Mike Brown situation in Ferguson where there was no video. So it was this person's word and that person's word. And even though he wasn't law enforcement, you had George Zimmerman and there's no proof of that. It was this person's word. And with this, seeing the video and seeing how blatant it was, I think that's why we have more allies this time, because it's people who might would have denied it if it weren't on video, who might would have made excuses, cannot make excuses this time. And so, but at this moment, I still feel a level of frustration because I'm just hoping that this does lead to change, police reform, and the things that we need. I would be lying if I said I'm optimistic that it's going to lead to it, but I'm hoping so. So that's kind of how I am, right now.
I would like to follow up. Coach Tariq Maben, head boys basketball coach at Mount Vernon School, Sandy Springs, Georgia. Definitely have a lot of emotions going. Obviously, I'm upset, I'm angry. And also the reality is, for all of us, probably, this is not the first time we've experienced this, right? I remember being 5 or 6 years old when the Rodney King thing happened. And I remember being 100% fearful because the video was black and white. It was grainy, real old school, and it scared the living daylights out of me. I was absolutely afraid of police for a long time. I'm born and raised Memphis, Tennessee. So I've seen this a million times. I've had several, white coaches, white parents from my school call me, ask me how I feel. And I was, if I'm being honest, when it first happened, I was upset because I'm always upset. But it was, that was the drill, right? Every year, that's the drill. And so after a lot of reflection, I saw a post on Twitter, and it gave me a different emotion. Head coach, Coach Tribby, he's the coach of Middle Georgia Prep. He actually went out and protested, a peaceful protest, and got arrested. And what he said was one of the major things he saw was that there were a lot of people out there with a lot of passion and fire, but he wished there were more local community leaders, coaches, and educators out there because we help develop our future. And it's important for them to get the guidance from us. And so I also felt a sense of disappointment because we weren't out there, with the kids. And I'm not saying that we had to be, but I know for a fact there are a couple of my former players, whether high school or AAU, who's been out there marching. And yes, I'm a mentor to them. I love them. I pray with them, but they didn't call me. I didn't feel the need to call me for some reason. And before that, I didn't call them in advance. How you feeling right now? What do you feel like doing? And they're already out there marching, which is a good thing. But I feel like we as coaches, and I'm talking about me, like when I say we as coaches, yes, all of us coaches, but I'm really talking about myself. I felt like I dropped the ball as a leader, early on. I've had a couple of Zoom meetings with my team already. We're talking about it. We're talking about tough conversations because I'm all about that. But I really do feel like early on, there was more that could have been done. Another feeling I have is I'm at a predominantly white school. I'm at a private school. I love my school. They gave me my first opportunity of being the head coach, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm the head of middle school chapel. I have a leadership role there, and I'm grateful. But the conversations you see on social media, which also can be poison, because you spend enough time on social media, you can get upset and feel all types of emotions. But when I see some of the comments that are made, I see stuff like, well, he's different. That's a special case. Sometimes I feel like in my school, I'm looked at as a different Black man. Oh, he's different. That's Coach T. He's a different person. And I'm not different. I'm a Black man. I was raised in Memphis. I went to Memphis East High School. My god brother was murdered right in front of me when I was 15 years old. I didn't grow up with any type of silver spoon at all. God gave me the heart that I have. I have a heart to love, no matter what color you are. That's just who I am. But it's so important that my colleagues, that the parents of my basketball players and students, that my basketball players and students, that they fully understand how we as African Americans feel. They at least understand what we mean when we say white privilege, what we mean when we say systemic racism, and also selective outrage. A lot of people pick and choose what they're upset about. And so these are all of the many emotions that I have. I have not lost my ability to love. I still love everybody. I still pray for everybody. But at the same time, something has to change as far as how we approach the country that we live in. So I say all that to say I have a lot of emotions going on, and like I'm sure everybody else does.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Coach Cecilio Gomez from New York City, Norman Thomas High School. Similar to the last two coaches, there's a lot of emotions that, have come through me. But the two that resonates is it saddened me and it frustrated me. Just because it seems like it's the same pattern continuously over and over, and frustrates me because we don't see any progression. The same racist actions we saw with Rodney King and back in the early 90s, you're seeing it now. And now we're seeing it on video. And as coaches, we pride ourselves on being great people. We pride ourselves on being good role models, treating everybody good, and to not see, to see all the hatred that's going on in the world. It saddens and frustrates you. And it really, one of the reasons why I'm on here is we really need to get out there that there has to be a change, and the systematic approach, there has to be a systematic change in this country.
I guess I go next. My name is Keith. I go by K Hill. I'm a singer-songwriter from Atlanta, Georgia. Coach McKenzie invited me on to speak from the position of a youth. My mentality is a little different. I feel like I don't necessarily expect my oppressor to have any sense of self-reflection. I don't expect anybody from, you know, I don't expect a white person to understand a black person's plight. You know what I mean? I don't expect for them to and I hate to make it sound so racial, but I don't expect, somebody who has grown up in this America with nothing but privilege their entire life. You know what I'm saying? Whether they came from, dirt roads or, come from a silver spoon, they don't understand what it is for, a black kid to grow up in Atlanta in the inner city and fear walking out his door because I may or may not make it back. Or if I get into some type of situation where I need paramedics or I need the police to come out, I'm afraid to call them because they may take me down. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was in a car accident. I called a cop. I wound up getting a ticket for calling him. And I'm like, bro, this is the most pettiest thing I've ever experienced. And I got hit. Dude ran into me. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't expect, you know what I'm saying, somebody from an opposite walk of life. You know what I mean? I think, granted, we can sit here all day long and talk about change and talk about things to happen, but I feel like to an extent, I understand the gripe. Granted, it may not be necessarily the best way, but you got to look at it like this. Dr. King, in the 60s, excuse me, they were marching. They were marching back in the 60s, and I feel like even if you go back and look at his last, speech before, we all know the I Have a Dream speech, but if you go back and look at his last speech when he was talking about, I might have led my people into a burning building and don't let nobody take your manhood. I feel like at that point he was empowering, African Americans in the sense of, all right, it's time to stand for your stuff. It's time to stand up for yourself and not allow the same old thing. And I feel like that's what they took him out over. I feel like my generation coming up, we ain't going for that. We ain't going for the same old, we just gonna keep singing until we get recognized. Like I don't agree with that. You know what I'm saying? I don't necessarily say that, tearing up your own neighborhood is the right way neither, but I feel like it gets their attention. You know what I'm saying? It gets it gets that middle of America, Donald Trump attention, if you get what I'm trying to say.
Yes,
I'm gonna piggyback.
Oh, go ahead. You can go ahead.
Okay. I'm piggybacking off of Keith. My name is Javaris Harris, and I'm a sports journalist, and also I am a current college student at Columbus State University, and I work with the sports information department as well there. The way I'm feeling right now, I'm going through a wide range of mixed emotions. I'm hurt. I'm saddened. I'm confused. It's so many other words that I can put it in, but from Keith's standpoint, I understand because I grew up in the Generation Z era as well. I'm from Jonesboro, Georgia. I'm not far from you, Keith, and we as the youth today, we feel that how can we change something if the past generations have tried, but it kind of seems to be almost out of our perspective in a sense, if you get what I'm saying. It's like we want to do something and we know we can do it, but what is the plan of action to do so? We have to come up with a plan to in order for change. Okay, we're protesting and we want better for our black people, but how are we going to be able to keep that continuously going? So I understand exactly where Keith is coming from. I understand as a youth, I understand as a black individual, and I tell everybody this before I'm a journalist, before I'm a student, before I work with sports information, I'm an African American male. So I understand everything that that we're feeling right now.
I guess I'll piggyback off a little bit what they said. My name is Latoya Brown. I'm the head girls coach at Llewellyn High School in Locust Grove, Georgia. I feel angry. I feel frustrated. I feel it's just unexplainable. I'm from a small town called Cairo, Georgia. And it's about as racist as it'll get. You know, our sheriff was just reporting, and he was just in the Thomasville Times for stating that Cairo should go back to modern day lynching and hanging for the Black African-American kids that are there protesting peacefully. Just grab them off the street and hang them. And so, you know, and having a grandmother, my grandmother is 77 years old, and she's unfortunately, you know, lived through those times, you know, lived through where she, you know, she talked to us and tell us stories of how, you know, as a little girl, where crosses used to come and, you know, KKK used to come and burn crosses in front of the yard trying to, you know, take my great-grandfather's land and all. So growing up in that, you know, that small town, racism is something that was just like pretty much an everyday thing, you know, from the principal on down. So, you know, and that's one thing I would say, like being at Luella High School, my principal is, he have those tough conversations. You know, he's white, and he understand, you know, he's very, very supportive, and he don't mind having those difficult conversations because, you know, it is a difficult conversation for people that I would say that if it makes you uncomfortable having the conversation, then maybe it's something a little racist about you. You know, if you have, and it's also about respect too. You know, when you're having that open conversation, I think it's definitely, you know, about respect. It's about understanding. I seen one of the NFL guys tweet this week saying how he was born in a small town, somewhat like me, and it was very racist, and that's how his parents raised him. And he said, thankful to sports because sports changed my view on Black men. Me playing sports with other African-American men and not being the only team full of white guys, I seen Black men are not thugs. They're not hoodlums. You know, when you have someone that's one of the most powerful men in America that's referring to one group of people as thugs, and another group of people that's taking semi-automatics to courthouses as good men. So I think, you know, that's where it's so important for us as coaches to come together because we have kids at a prime time in their life, young adults, and we have the opportunity, you know, like Coach Tariq said, we have an opportunity to really have these type of conversations, you know, with them and with their, you know, with our community. And, you know, I have someone tell me, you know, be careful what you say on, you know, social media, being that you're a head coach. And I said, you know, as long as I am standing up for my community and I'm being respectful and there's not anything derogatory that I say because that's not what I represent as a person, I'm going to speak my mind. I'm going to stand behind our community because my kids are looking at me. We, like Coach said, we have had conversations, you know, and you just, and I think we're here because you have the coaches, you have people that in these power position that don't want to talk about it. They're rather sweeping under the rug. Let's move on. This is going to blow over. However, having a brother, my baby brother's a police officer. I have a baby brother that went and fought in Afghanistan. He's a Purple Heart, a medically retired Purple Heart. So I have someone that's went and fought for this country. I have someone that's out there in danger that's a police officer. But so I understand from all of those sides. And at the end of the day, what we are going through and what has been going on for 400 plus years, we still shouldn't have to march to get people to hear us. We shouldn't have to burn down buildings to get people to understand. It is too many people in power that young, that's connected and that's recruiting and having these Black African-American men and women. If you care enough about your players, this is something that we as a coaching community across the world should be bridging that gap on. And we have to do our part. And I'm so thankful to Coach for putting this together and having this discussion because it is an uncomfortable discussion.
I'd like to follow that up. You know, my name is Robert Alfonso Jr. I actually used to coach in Georgia, and now I have Baseline Sideline, which is a web magazine for athletics, but that's not important right now. I'm saddened and frustrated because, one, sad from the standpoint of as Tariq mentioned, many of us have had the unfortunate opportunity to witness the Rodney King beatings and murder. It took place so many years ago that you just look at it, and again, technology wasn't what it is today. Then watching what happened to George Floyd, I was hurt because I'm like, dude, the dude is as big as I am, as seems articulate as I am right now, and seems to be just as humble as many of us could be. And it hurt me, and I was, of course, angry. But immediately after going through probably maybe 2 days of being overly frustrated and angry, and just looking over my shoulder on certain things, I thought about two former players who are currently police officers in Georgia, ironically. One is in DeKalb County, the other one is a state trooper. And the one in DeKalb County is actually, he reminded me of Ahmaud Arbery, just because he looks like him, his smile's similar. And he even told me, he's like, yo, coach, I'm thinking about getting out of it because it's bullshit, and that bothers me, because here's a kid who found something that he was able to grow into. Not that he grew up wanting to be a cop, but he understood the purpose of protect and serve and wanted to make a difference, trying to help people, trying to be a community leader based on, again, you guys all do the same thing, and based on the principles we teach them in the game that we all love to coach, regardless of what sport it is. And for the last probably 2 days, I've actually been nervous for them, because now not only do they got to worry about, again, potentially issues that they may encounter in the street as police officers, because they're not considered the bad apples and things of that nature. But then you turn around and here they got to walk the streets as African-American males themselves. And even me, myself, even though I'm 100% Hispanic, I tell people this all the time. It's like, people are like, oh, you're not really black. I was like, you're right, because I'm Spanish. But if I were to get stopped, that officer doesn't know my ethnicity or race. All right. And it doesn't matter that I've worked as an educator, that I've been, in the sports journalism field, and I even currently work at a juvenile detention center, and I purposely drive around with my jacket right now just so that I don't get harassed by police, because again, I realized that, they could be imposing, there's some intimidation factor for some people, and I understand that, but that's not an excuse. That's not an excuse for a man to be killed over a $20 counterfeit bill. That's not an excuse for a young man to be killed and shot in the back, even though I know it wasn't by cops, but still, nonetheless, shot in the back because he's jogging a potential mistaken identity, and I'm having a healthy, I want to call it healthy right now, a healthy debate with a former college teammate of mine who's a state trooper in New York, and we had our racist encounter, to say the least, when we were in college together. And, it never changed in terms of, I'm going to still back him up, because as we all say, we don't all got to get along off the court, but on the court, we still want to treat each other like family and respect. But there were several incidents that he even had when we were playing, and I helped him maneuver out of it, that when he became a state trooper, I'll be honest with you, I was a little concerned. And then even some of the remarks in our healthy debate right now, it still makes me concerned, because we're in a state across the country that no matter the sport, again, or what you coach, we're vulnerable. I mean, it's almost like we're moving targets. We're moving targets as individuals who, just because our skin is different, it's giving people the thought of, hey, their lives don't matter. And there needs to be a different narrative. I don't know personally what it is. I know some of the things that are going on in the country between riots and things of that nature is like people are just pissed off, and people are just pissed off and they're angry. And, people have asked me like, so then why are they doing that? I'm like, you would do the same thing if you was upset at some point. I mean, we're dealing with a pandemic, and there were people protesting because they couldn't get haircuts. Like they said, like Cuomo said, but now people are protesting because someone's life was basically sucked out of them. That if it was unfortunately an animal, like we all know Michael Vick went through, they would be crucified. So, I'm glad that there's 34 people here and more who we've spoken in various Zoom calls, that we just got to continue to, lock arms and lock arms to fight against this, but also to lock arms to put around our players, because they need us, and they need us in a way like they've never needed us before. Who cares about if they're running 2 miles right now, 3 miles right now? At the end of the day, we just want to make sure that they're healthy and safe. So
thank you for those answers. As we move on to the second question, I would say that the way that I feel is a little bit confused. When you grow up as a Black man, you're taught to that a husband provides and protects. And we're in a generation where those two, it seems like you could do one or the other. If you protect too much, you won't be able to provide. If you want to provide so much, then you can't protect. If you go out there and you march and they catch you on the picture, it's likely that you may be, fired or something of that nature. So there's a lot of confusion going on. And then there's the confusion of the people that you see that's saying nothing, which is another point, but we'll get to that. Question number 2, and if we can have some of the panelists that haven't spoke, we all talk about PTSD as it, refers to a soldier coming back from war, but we don't talk about PTSD as just growing up Black in America. So question number 2 is that, can you discuss the PTSD that you have growing up Black in America? Because I think that many people just don't understand what you go through on a daily basis, and some of the way you act is a result of PTSD.
Yeah, Coach McKissick, I'll take that. This is Jonathan Jones. I'm out in Dallas, Texas. I do professional development and student athlete development. And just in regards to that question, for me, my parents always told me to respect authority. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. And I've realized now here recently, because I've really been thinking about it here lately, but I've been pulled over many a times, and if it be for speeding or swerving, whatever that might have been, and I'll admit that I was in the wrong some of those times. But in the same respect, I also attended graduate school at SMU, which is Southern Methodist University, primarily Caucasian other students. And I always realized that I always made sure that I went a step above. So for me going to a regular class, regular day, I would make sure I'd get fully suited. I'd make sure I have on a tie. I would make sure I put on my best dress. And even now, when I leave home going wherever I'm going, my mom would always tell me, she's like, son, make sure you have your license. Make sure you dress this way. Make sure you do this. Just ultimately making sure that I would make it back home safe. So when it comes to PTSD, or when it comes to how being Black in America is affected, or how we're affected just based on our daily interaction, man, it's tough. Always having to look over your shoulder, because I'm 6'5", and just like Roberto said earlier is the fact that I intimidate people just being me, because I'm tall and I'm African American. So so there are times I make sure to be extremely polite. Other times I try to hold the door open for everybody that's walking through, just to make me, I guess, less scary, for a lack of better terms. So just in regards to the PTSD and what that looks like, it's just having to always go above and beyond in everything, and being overly polite, overly respectful, speaking to officers when I see them just at grocery stores and saying, thank you for what you do, just to help them put the guard down. But that would just be my share.
I'll follow up. My name is Thomas Bridges. I'm a rising coach in the professional space. I'd like to leave the team I'm associated with unannounced. But to I guess I'll start off kind of piggybacking off of what Mr. Jones just said. Growing up Black, we are always taught to present ourselves in a light where we eliminate as many questions as possible. We're taught to be, we've all heard it, right? Be twice as good to get half as much. And I think that growing up with that mindset is highly damaging. But there are some positives that come along with it, right? Like, your drive and your ambition. But I think that another very large piece of kind of the mindset that we are that we're taught to have to exist, to kind of prove that we are worth being treated, as fellow humans. It's kind of wild, really. I can speak to some experiences that I've had. I won't go back too far, but maybe just to high school. I'm a young man, 26, and going back to high school, maybe just a decade or so ago, I've had experiences playing basketball, playing baseball, in McDonough, Georgia. I'll leave the school that I played for unnamed, but there were times when I was called out of my name on the court. I can remember a specific instance where we went to play. We had a baseball game way out in South Georgia somewhere. And when my dad found out what the name or where the school was located, he told me I wasn't allowed to ride the bus. I had to ride with him there. That was the only game that he was able to rework his work schedule to attend, because he was just that worried. When we were there, he kept an eye on me the entire time. He drove me home. There was an instance on a bus with a teammate at a different game where he told me about his family's ties to the Ku Klux Klan, and it was a joke to him and a few other guys on the team. And it's just kind of, it's the idea that I personally felt that they knew they could do that, because if I retaliated, I wasn't upset. I was an angry Black man. And being an angry Black man in America is, it's a death sentence in a lot of cases. I'm a graduate of Georgia Tech, and there I had some really unfortunate encounters with law enforcement officers. My mom was dropping me off at school my freshman year, and she had an episode in the car. So I called 911. The police showed up, and before they gave my mom treatment or called the ambulance, he berated me to make sure that I was even a student there. And when I asked him why that was important, he told me to shut up and answer the question. So I know that wouldn't have happened if I didn't look the way I did. But I answered the question. Luckily, I had my student ID on me. Again, kind of like Mr. Jones noted, always carry your identification around, so that I could prove to him that I belong there, right? Like, this is a public school on a public street in the middle of Atlanta. And that was the incident that I had with someone who is employed to protect and to serve. You know, I pulled over by an officer once. I was speeding, crossing the state line, something that my dad's always warned me about, but I was speeding across the state line, trying to get home from Florida. Officer pulled me over. And, you know, one of the things that I was taught growing up was when you get pulled over, turn off the car, take off your seatbelt, and get your license or registration out before the officer gets to the car. Get it out and leave it on top of this, or right on top of the dashboard in front of the steering wheel, and show your hands. And no matter what, you don't reach for anything. You answer yes, sir, no, sir. Yes, sir, no, sir, and yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. You don't present any opportunity for him to ask a question or feel as though he's being threatened. Despite the fact that the license and registration are right there, you announce to him that you're reaching for it, and you pass it with your left hand out the window so that he can't say that you're reaching across your body for anything. And these are experiences. And honestly, the most recent one that I think has just really, really, really taken a toll on my mental health is the prevalence of the spectacle of Black death in America. It's played on the news repeatedly. Like even just now, I saw the clip that you shared earlier, the CNN clip, and again, it was just another time that there was an image being played over the nationwide air of a Black man being murdered, and that has become all too common. You know, we see that one. We saw Ahmaud. We saw Mike Brown. Like the list. I'm sorry. The list goes on and on and on. And the issue that I have the most with it isn't that this is new. It's that this has been like this for years. Like I won't get too deep into it, but I encourage everyone here to look up the origin of the word picnic. Like this isn't new, and it's been a spectacle in America for as long as I've been alive, and even longer than that. And the problem is it desensitizes people to things, right? Like where you stand politically, where you stand religiously, whatever, shouldn't matter, right? You saw somebody's life get stripped from them on a video, and you ask, well, what happened? I won't dive too deep into my personal beliefs, but where I stand, a life was lost. No matter what happened, somebody's father isn't going home, somebody's husband, somebody's son, somebody's brother, a life was stripped. And it wasn't the first. I hate to admit that I don't believe it'll be the last, but the biggest problem I have is how it's taken. It doesn't enrage enough people, in my opinion. And I think I'll leave that there.
You know, what's so ironic is like when you cut on the news, right, and you see that a movie theater can get shot up, or like let's look at Sandy Hook, Caucasian kid can go up inside an elementary school and kill a bunch of 4-year-olds. You can see, in Charleston, white kid can go up inside a Black church, shoot up all the Black people. And even there, they took him to Burger King afterwards. You know what I'm saying? Like he actually made it to get arrested and made it to trial. When you see where, the guy, I think it was North Carolina, South Carolina, he called the cops because he was stuck on the side of the road, and she thought she was reaching for her taser. She shoot the man in his back with his hands up. You know what I mean? You get shot for just being African American. You just yesterday here in Atlanta, 2 college kids was riding home, stuck in traffic, and the police, surrounded their car like they was, kingpins. You know what I mean? To drag and taser these kids, and they college students, and they stuck in traffic. You know what I mean? They weren't protesting; they were just in traffic. You know what I mean? You get drug out your car, your window broken in your face, and you get terrorized, and you asking too much of a parent to be calm and collective, and like like Coach said, how can I protect and provide when I feel like I got nephews, I got nieces, I got sisters, I got mothers, I got brothers And if something happened to them, you're telling me to just keep my composure because you're a cop, because you got a badge. You know what I mean? Like that right there, you asking me to basically risk it all because I feel like, hell, if I don't protect myself, bro, then what? You know what I mean? You see, like Breonna Taylor, she was a paramedic, a first aid responder at home in her bed. Cops kicking the door at 2 a.m, don't announce themselves as cops. They looking for someone that they already had in custody. They're in the wrong house. And her boyfriend, who was a licensed carrier, he returns fire. They shoot and kill his woman right in front of him 8 times. And then they want to arrest him and say that he attempted murder on a cop. You know what I mean? Like, you mean to tell me my Second Amendment don't mean nothing? My First Amendment don't mean nothing. If I speak up and talk from the chest, talk from the heart, it's a problem. I'm gonna offend somebody. You know what I mean? If I say, hey man, this is wrong, no matter how you try to slice it or dice it, it's wrong. It falls upon deaf ears. Like I said earlier, I don't expect someone who benefits from white privilege. I don't expect someone who benefit from, oppression. You know what I mean? You rather indirectly or directly, you benefit. You know what I'm saying? It serves you when it comes down to, the red line and where I can live and where I can move to, or education systems. It benefits you. I don't expect anyone that's Caucasian to understand what it's like to grow up. You know what I mean? Whether this was the 40s or 2020, I don't expect you to understand, because how could you? You know what I mean? How could you? Like your people never had to fight. Excuse me, I'm getting a little emotional, but your people never had to fight just to prove that they were human. You know what I mean? We was what, 1/5, and that wasn't even 80 years ago, not even 60 years ago. You know what I'm saying? We had to prove that we was human just to get natural human rights. You know what I mean? So I don't expect for anybody that don't look like me to understand. And then the people that do look like me, you got so much self-hatred with the whole colorism thing. Oh, I'm light skinned, or I'm caramel, or I'm black, or I'm chocolate. It's so idiotic to even think like that. But we run across people like that on the regular and don't even understand how that's self-destructive and it holds us down as well. You know what I mean? When you have officers who can't even acknowledge other officers. I seen something on Instagram and I reposted it. You had 2 cops profile the FBI agent, had him in handcuffs. And he said, read my identification, read it. I need to see your supervisor. You got 2 regular cops profiling a black man just because he's his complexion. And he's FBI. It's like, only in this country do you see this, man, where it doesn't matter if you on the other side. I seen it where you had an officer, you had an African-American, woman who's a cop. She, tried to reprimand a white cop for pushing a sister who was on her knees. You know what I mean? And just his body language, the way he shrugged his shoulders, like it didn't matter. You know what I mean? That arrogance. It don't matter if you put the blue before the badge. It don't matter if it doesn't matter in this country. You know what I'm saying? And you don't want to be defeated. You don't want to be, outraged and be all loose cannon, because then, you labeled this, angry black man, or you're labeled crazy. Only in America is, African Americans are labeled thugs and criminals. And yet we don't do half of the shit that you see Caucasian people do, excuse my language, but you don't see us run up in those schools shooting up nobody. You don't see us, killing innocent folks on a random, Tuesday just at the movie theater minding their own business. You don't see us doing these type of heinous acts, but yet they want to label us thugs and criminals. You know what I mean? I find it ironic. How, you could be in the same city, same area, commit the same crime and get 2 different sentences. It's ironic. You know what I mean? I find that crazy, like that we live in a society like so. I mean, I know I went on a tangent, but it's frustrating when you see, your people constantly lynched. You know what I mean? No matter if we got a black president or not, constantly lynched, constantly reminded that, you're still a nigga. And I know some people may get offended by me saying it, but you're still a nigga. It don't matter if you're people from the islands, you're still a nigga. It don't matter if you're Spanish or Latino, you're still a nigga. You still view that in this degraded way based on this idea that you're somehow better than me because of your complexion is a little lighter than mine. You know what I mean? This whole, and you're jealous of everything we do. You're jealous of our culture. You're jealous of our heritage. You're jealous of everything that we do. Our women look better. You know what I mean? Our athletes are more aggressive and more talented, but yet here you are, still in our culture, still in our heritage, still in everything about us, and yet you're so damn intimidated that we got to walk on eggshells around you. and everything is already given to you. Everything is already damn near made for you, but yet you still threatened and intimidated by who we are as individuals. And I find that ironic. I'm sorry.
I think what you're
Hey, Coach.
hearing is you're hearing kind of a firsthand experience and the emotion behind the youth that we're serving. And I know him personally, and I know he's not out there, looting, and he's not out there rioting. But, some of the things, he may not agree with how it's being said, but it's his truth. And it's a lot of young people's truth. And we cannot discredit and not try our best to understand their truth. But I'm going on to point number 3. Mondre, was you going to speak?
I was really quick, Coach.
Right.
And I'll get out the way and I'll make this quick. I know I just want to combat some of the things that are being said to people who are trying to understand, right? And one of the things that are being put out there to people who are trying to understand, who may not understand, is that that the media is inciting people to violence, and that the media is behind that is just one officer with one person that got killed, and that the rest is just a media creation. I hope people understand that it's happening every day. May not die from it, but it is happening on a regular basis. And I'll just share 2 quick things. First time I ever saw a gun up close, it was having a police officer point one in my face. I was about 14 years old on my way to school, missed the school bus. My mom used to yell at me all the time, get out the house on time. I'm leaving the house about 6:15, missed my school bus, running down the street trying to catch it, and have no idea where the police came from, what they were trying to do. They weren't really interested in what I was trying to do. It was just having me on the ground, face down as quick as possible, with a gun in my face doing so. I was a kid that the basketball court was always my sanctuary. It was always my place of escape. One particular night, me and my mom kind of got into it, being a young teenager, just being kind of rebellious at home, not wanting to wash dishes or something, probably something small. But what we got into it about, I don't remember. But what I do remember is I did what I normally do when things aren't going well for me. And that's just, I wanted to be on a basketball court. So I went to a park that was like a couple of blocks from my house and just kind of shooting, playing around, doing layups up underneath the rim. I just wanted to think. And that's where I always go to think. And I was slamming on top of a police car for being in the park after it closed. Not saying that I wasn't wrong, saying that that just probably wasn't the way to handle a child in that case. So I just want people to understand that these things happen to people who you know. Those 2 incidents, another thing that I want to make sure that people understand, were never reported. I never even told my mother. So when you look at police statistics, my name won't be there, right? A lot of other people's names will not be there because at that time in the neighborhood that I grew up in, I felt like that was normal. I just, wrong place, wrong time, right? That was normal treatment. So I never said anything to anybody. But it's you try to escape it, which is what I did, which is why I moved to Atlanta. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, for those who don't know me. So I felt like the openly racist ways of Louisville, Kentucky, Louisville being one of the most segregated cities in the United States, still to this day, Jefferson County, one of the most segregated counties in the country. I tried to come to Atlanta because I felt like, Atlanta is, as T.I. said, is Wakanda, right? And at first it was great, but had experiences even here with people who I worked for. I work at IT, so typically in technology, you're as a Black male, you're probably one of the only ones in the building or one of the only ones in your department. which is fine by me. It doesn't necessarily bother me. I never looked at it as a thing for real. I just felt like, oh, maybe, there's not a lot of other brothers that really like technology like that. So I never really looked at it that way. However, we get called in to work on a Saturday morning. My company was moving buildings, right? I used to work for a company called S1 Corporation. They're now Fiserv, if anybody's familiar with that company. But we were moving from Peachtree Industrial to an office in Buckhead. And we had to do this and manage our clients. They didn't have a moving company. So when the moving company moved your actual cube, you had to come and set up your stuff. I was going there to help do that. I was also going to help do some work, set up some servers, make sure everything is running correctly. But it's cold and it's rainy. It's a Saturday. I get to the office. I'm wearing Timberlands, some jeans, and a hoodie because it's freezing outside and it's raining. My boss meets me at the elevator before I can even take off my hoodie or my hat or anything. And he meets me at the elevator and was like, Andre, you look like a thug. Now, mind you, he's wearing jeans and sneakers. The only difference between he and I was, I'm wearing a hoodie because I haven't got to my desk yet, and he's wearing a button-up shirt. I was stunned, right? The only thing I could muster to say was, why would you say that? Like, and I'm looking down at myself because I'm wondering, like, what about me makes me look like a thug? He's now the vice president of operations at Fiserv. Imagine how many people's livelihoods that he's in charge of every single day. Another incident that was never reported. And that's the thing that I take away from all of this. Put the onus on myself that that's one way that I feel like the younger generation really gets it. They're not gonna shut up. They're not gonna, and it goes back to what you said, Coach, of my focus on just trying to provide, right? Like, I don't have a college degree, so my status or whatever positions that I got was just off of, extra hustle, grind, learning things on the internet, learning about IT through hands-on kind of being trained and stuff like that. So it was my desire to provide that put my ability to protect my family and myself oftentimes to the back burner, because you always feel like, man, I can move to the suburbs, I can, you know what I mean, that you can make it right with enough money, and you find out that you can't, that's just not possible. So I hope people understand that, man. It's just not, it's not what the media is doing is making us relive personal experiences. They're not creating experiences that we are not familiar with. So I just hope everybody understands that.
Thank you. And that leads me into just a segue into question number 3. And I'm going to, so that all of the people who are watching online can see, we have several coaches in here. Several of them are Black, several are Caucasian. And there were more Caucasians that wanted to come on, but, may just not have felt comfortable, didn't want to say the wrong thing, and that's understandable. That's very understandable. But so you get a reality of how real this is. And I have the screen on the square. If you have not been racially profiled, harassed by the police, I want you to raise your hand right now. If you've not. And I don't know if, let me keep your hand raised because I got to go to 2 screens. And right now, you can't see it probably on your screen, but there's 1 Black hand raised. And that's Jarvis from down there in Columbus. And I'm from Columbus. And I hate to tell you, It's coming. It ain't got there yet. But you're going over there to that east side. It's coming, you know, and that just goes to make it real. And I really appreciate my Wright brothers for being on here just to get this understanding, because that makes it real for you. We're not going to come to work and talk about it because it's kind of like a given. You know, it's a given. I got this shirt from my school I went to. My coach sent it to me and said it's okay not to be okay. And it's about mental health. And a lot of us with that PTSD, we're dealing with mental health issues. And a lot of kids are dealing with mental health issues, and they come to school or they come to the team and, you know, they have issues that have nothing to do with basketball. But this is a call about understanding. And I think it would, you know, it would only be right. It would be wrong if we tried to just push our issue and push our conversation. But there are some guys out there who are white and they're speaking up and they have an understanding. And I'm going to call a coach out to kind of just set that tone, and hopefully some more of the white coaches can speak on this issue. It's just about basically, as a white coach, can you still be neutral right now? Not in the past, but can you be neutral and is not saying something? You know, as Black people, we feel like when you don't say something, you're saying something. But I know I'll ask Coach Blake Dudonis to kind of take the lead on that one, because he's been very vocal, and it's hard to find people that says, you know what, I don't care if you fire me. I don't care if you know, I don't get back to the country club, but I'm going to speak the truth. And I really appreciate him for that. So I'll kind of let him address how it's feeling to be a white coach right now with Black players and the Black community, and what's okay to say, what's not okay to say. How do you, as a white coach, you know, we can tell you what we think you should say, but it's still different. So.
Well, I appreciate that. You guys can hear me? Yeah. So Keith, I really appreciate what you said, in that you don't expect white people to understand what what Black people go through, because you're right, because we can't, right? But what's not okay, what's not right, is to then not say something anyway, because you guys have been great and really kind to white people so far, but nothing's going to change until white people demand it to change, and we continue to demand it to change. And that's the truth. And I know you all know that, and I know that you have all said that, but you're waiting for us to say it too, and that's the truth. George Floyd's death will mean something and be relevant until white people lose interest in it, or we don't. And that's a harsh, blunt truth. As soon as we do, because there's white people in charge everywhere. The white people established what the police force is, what the government is. White people have established everything. So until we decide to change it, it ain't changing, because we are the majority, as that original CNN clip said. So for me as a coach, telling my kids, and look, my team's white, like, hey, it's not your fault you have white privilege. You did not choose to be born white. You did not choose to have that privilege, but you were, and you do have it. And to ignore that truth, that's where it's wrong. To not do something with that privilege, that's on you now, because that is a choice that you have. And and that's a harsh reality to accept. You guys said it earlier that there's plenty of white people who have gone through a lot of tough things in their lives, that have come up through poverty, who have come up through all this stuff, but none of those obstacles or speed bumps were because of the color of our skin. And that's the truth. And that is where it's different. And we have to acknowledge that privilege, even if we can't necessarily feel it. Because I know plenty of people who have come from nothing, who worked hard to get where they got, and said, my privilege didn't serve me in any sort of way. And I said, but it did, because if you're Black, you would have had to work even harder, as hard as it is for that to believe. And that's the truth. And that's something that I feel responsibility to tell our white kids on our team. Again, it's not your fault, but you have to do something with it. Another thing too, look, we're in basketball world. We, as white people, me too, man, we borrow from the Black culture all the time. I mean, I wear Jordans during games, like straight up, like on the side, I'm wearing a suit, shirt and tie, and I'm wearing G's, right? And I'm listening to hip hop music and I'm doing all that. How can someone said this to me the other day, and I was like, my gosh, that's right. How can I borrow from a culture? And then when that culture is under attack, literally being killed, do I walk away and say, that's not my problem? That affects me. Like you can choose to be that way, but then you're just a taker. And history shows that white people are takers. There's no mystery about that. But that's another harsh reality where you don't get to pick and choose. If you're about it, be about it. Like you said, if you don't say something, you're saying something. If you don't pick a side, you pick the side. And being willing to look inward and say, like, yeah, that's on me. I'm someone who's always been vocal about these things, but I haven't done enough as far as actually doing something. I haven't. And it's a damn shame it took someone dying in my city. I live in Minneapolis. I went downtown 2 days ago. I've been there. I saw it. And it's a damn shame it took that for me to jump all in. I'd say I'm probably been 80% in this whole time. Man, that ain't enough. It's not. If you're not 100% in, you're out. And I've been out. And that's something that I can't allow myself to do anymore. And something I've really been trying to do is, we talk about the riots everyone knows the rioting, the looting, it's not good, but it's taken the focus off of the main thing. And I've been trying to really encourage a lot of my white friends of, don't but this man's death. And George Floyd died, that was terrible, but no, but the riots are bad, we need to stop that. Yeah. How about the systematic racism? How about that? How about another person dying for nothing? And that's what I'm calling on our people, our kids, our other people, trying to educate them on what can we do as white people to change things. I know so many people feel overwhelmed. What do I do, right? What am I supposed to do? And I'm telling, man, call your local police force and ask if they all have body cams. A lot of them don't, and demand that they do. Ask what their de-escalation training is for people of other races or mentally ill or people on drugs. Demand that there's change in cash bail bonds. There's a lot of people who sit in jail for months waiting a trial for a petty crime just because they can't afford bail. And the vast majority of those people are Black people in our community that end up getting off for those crimes. And so what happens? They sit in jail for 2 months because they can't afford a $1,000 bond. What happens when you sit in jail for 2 months? Well, you get fired from your job. And what happens when you get fired from your job? You can't afford to pay rent. And what happens when you can't afford rent? You get evicted. And suddenly you got a history. And suddenly you're thrown into this cycle again and again. And these are things that white people, we don't see it. And again, it's not our fault that we don't see it, but it is our fault if we continue to turn a blind eye to it. So encouraging our kids and other people of our community to be aware of these things, look around. I've had so many white people call me and saying, tell me what I can do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I want to do something. I'm like, hell yeah, that's okay. That's cool. Like, you're aware of your ignorance. That's a huge step. All right. Like, let's continue to build and get better. So, I'll step off on this to just say that it's on us. It is on us, and I ain't going anywhere. So certainly, you mentioned before, I am unafraid to lose my job. I mean, I'm a coach at University of Wisconsin River Falls. I'm a college basketball coach. And I've said I will happily get fired because of the moral stances I take as a human being. And if that's what that means one day, then so be it. I sure hope that's not the case, but I will not stand off my convictions and go quiet and let another human being die because I was afraid to use my voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Coach, I'd like to follow Blake if that's possible. We as white America, we failed our Black brothers because we as a silent majority have stood back and let the brutality of the bad white people take precedence over us as being the silent majority who practices NIMBYism. It's not in my backyard. We go back to our house where we're comfortable, where we don't have to put up with it because we're white. We don't have to see all the racial profiling. We don't have to go downtown to see what's going on. We can look at it from the comfort of our sofa. We can look at all of those things. We failed historically. We failed from beginning to end. In 1963, when in Montgomery, you had the bombing where the 4 girls were killed in the church. For a moment in time, we stood there and said, "Oh, it hurts," but we didn't do anything to change it. When Rodney King went down and you had all the riots, we sat back at our sofas. We watched NIMBYism, not in my backyard. Oh, that's terrible, but we didn't do anything. Now we've got this all of going on in the world today, yet we still practice NIMBYism. Yes, but as Coach said, well, that's the reason I'm here tonight. I don't have the answers, but I coach numerous Black young men that are going to look to me, and I'm going to have to be honest and tell them I don't know the answer, but I'm going to listen to them and hopefully learn from them how I can help them become safer, where they can trust me to know that I've got their back, and to know that I'm not going to practice NIMBYism, that I'm going to do the things and take the steps to hopefully change what we as white America, white society has failed for over 400 years.
Thomas and E-Man, I was your coach. I think it'd be interesting to hear from a player's perspective who had a white coach. Maybe not even talking about me, but what would you as players, what do you want to see from coaches?
My name is Emmanuel Griffin. E-Man to coach you. From white coaches, from a Black standpoint, man, like everybody else said, you can't empathize with us because you can't walk in our skin. But if you could, I guess for what Coach you did, accept the fact that this history is history. It's been going on for years and years and years, and kind of stop trying to repeat history, basically. Although we see it already being repeated over and over again, from a Black standpoint, I'm 22 years old. I see my fellow Black people who are my age and younger. It's going to be hard to get to us, 16, 18. It's going to be hard to get to some of us, because it's like, how do I show you respect when you don't even give me respect? As a coach, I know for basketball, I learned a lot of how to be a man from coaches, whether it be from Coach you, whether it be from my father who helped coach me. But I learned a lot of great leadership qualities from being around players who necessarily weren't great leaders and learning from them, and then coaches who were like, "Hey, I see you doing the right thing." Now, granted, we don't have on a regular day-to-day basis, we don't have the conversation about racism. No, but I know Martin Luther King Day specifically, we practiced, but we did less practicing. We did more so talking about the issues that are going on. It's like, and as that was my first time experiencing that from a coach. It's like, hey, okay, Martin Luther King Day, do you really understand what it means? Yeah, I got you guys in here in the gym, but do you really understand what Martin Luther King stood for, why he did what he did? And not only just Martin Luther King, but other Black leaders. But from coaching standpoint, I would definitely say, try to put yourselves in the shoes of your players. It's going to be pretty much impossible, but see from their standpoint of how they're treated. And if you do coach Black players, understand the minute they leave your gym, they back to fighting another war. They're no longer in the safety and comfort of the 4 walls of the gym. They're back to fighting, how do I deal with when I do get pulled over? How do I deal with when they see me outside and all I'm doing is hanging with my friends? How do I deal with it? So try to empathize in a way of like, yeah, I get you guys want to hang out, enjoy your time, enjoy being you and unapologetically you, but don't just, like I said, try to put yourselves in the shoes, but it's going to be difficult to try to do it, but it's not impossible. I'll say that.
All right. Well, first, Coach, appreciate you giving me a chance to share. I'm gonna follow up on E-Man here. Personally, I think that the best thing that a white coach can do, whether you like Coach Blake, or have all white players or not, I think that the most powerful thing you can do is to, one, take a stand. Because something my father told me, and it's something I'll never forget, is, like we've already highlighted, not making a decision is a very big decision, and your silence screams loudly. And what you may or may not notice is that, like, your players, they see what you do, but more importantly, they see what you don't do. So by providing that space to speak, like maybe you do get a kid who speaks up and, he barks back at you because he disagrees. But what you've at least done is you've told him where you stand. You've told him, you told him or her where you stand. You've told them what it is that you believe in. And I would imagine that same conversation have demonstrated what you will and won't tolerate. So I think that's really big. I also think that, and this is by no means to offend, but I think that it's a huge piece for you to educate, not only your players, but yourselves as well on, and Keith mentioned, and it's the truth, like you, as a white coach, you'll never understand, what it's like to be a Black man or a Black woman in America. But what you can do is try to understand, like try to get as close as you can, like foster these relationships. Because one thing that Coach U always did, and he's the reason that I'm a rising coach in the professional space now, is just because of the relationship that we had. Like just be someone they can talk to if they feel they need to. Like, just if you are, say a white coach at a predominantly white school, and you've got, a Black player or two kind of sprinkled in on the team, like maybe, and I don't know the right words, right? Because I can't speak for every, Black person, but maybe, you do go to him or her individually and mention like, hey, anything you need, let me know, right? Because that's what we do in the coaching space is we impact people, we impact lives. So just mention to them, just kind of like, it doesn't even have to be a serious talk or, with violins playing in the background, but just let them know that like you've got them should something come up. And I truly believe that you creating that space is huge, because should something happen, like, be it with a teacher or with a fellow student or something that happens outside, they can now confide in you with that. Because, we've all seen, the quotes or whatever on Instagram or whatever platform, like everybody you see is fighting an internal battle that you don't know about. And sometimes the biggest pressure of that battle is not being able to express that. And as Black Americans, we are often told to be very, very careful about expressing yourselves, right? Because a lot of times it's written off as overly emotional, or you're overreacting, or you're mad for no reason, you're sad for no reason, why are you whining, et cetera, et cetera. But by creating that space, you've eliminated a huge problem, right? Because we all know, like, if you keep something bottled up, that top's gonna pop off at some point. And the problem is you never know where, when, or why it's gonna happen. So just being an outlet for them, I think is huge. And then also, education on microaggressions, I think is big. Like, for instance, you're traveling on the road. If you see something kind of funny going on, like you get a feeling, we all know, like that gut feeling, you get it for a reason, right? Like maybe you're in a restaurant or a gas station or whatever, and you see one of your players, like maybe getting, like, I don't know, I saw that clerk follow him at that part of the store, and then I saw him over there at that part of the store. Like maybe he's being followed. Walk up to your player, ask your player in front of that person, like, you good? Is this guy harassing you? Like, what's going on? What's the problem? Because you showing that you're there for them could completely change their lives. Like, I don't think I would be in the career that I am without Coach U fostering the relationship that we have, without just kind of expressing to me and to my teammates as well that he's just there for me. Like he was one of the first people to reach out to me when all this happened. And the last time I played for Coach U was 2012. It's 2020 now. So almost a decade ago was the last time I put on a uniform for this man, but he reached out to me to check and make sure I was okay. So just like fostering that relationship, the education, and, just trying to empathize, I think are really big pieces of the equation.
And then, go ahead, Coach Chad.
My name is Chad Williams. I'm the head basketball coach at First Flight High School in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And it's it's a school that lacks diversity. My team lacks diversity. We're much like Blake's team. We're all white team. But we're in Eastern North Carolina. So demographically, we're completely different than most of the teams that we play. And we play a really unique style. And because of our style, we've been invited to play in several events. And so I purposefully take my kids to MLK events. And we spend a lot of time talking about what it's all about. But the thing that, to me, that brings a point to is that how sports just transcends race. People see our team and they have an automatic thought of how we're going to be. We're not much to look at. We get laughed at. But then when we start playing, like, the fans start cheering for us and our fans start cheering for the other team. And it just turns into a game, and there's mutual respect between the players. And I think that, we have a chance, through sports to continue to sort of bridge the gap. And I'm going to be completely honest, man, I thought I was doing the right things. I thought I was being a good coach. I thought I was a good person because I'd done those things. But getting back to the very first question that was asked today was, how did this event make you feel? And I felt all those things that you guys said. I was mad. I was angry. I was confused. But I was also humiliated and embarrassed because that was my race that had done that. And so I felt it from a very different perspective. But at the same time, I also felt very enlightened because I finally saw with my eyes what one of my players had gone through last year. He's a mixed kid, and we have very few minority players. And I love my kids, man, to death. I'll do anything in the world for them. But he had taken a stance on police brutality and racial profiling, and it said some things, and it all stemmed from a racial event that we had at our school. It was actually national headlines. We had some things go on, and he took a stance on it. And I felt like I backed him, like I had his back. We went in and talked to the principal and stuff, and I backed him and I supported his stance on it. And then when I saw this happen, and more so the events even after, when I see the protests that are going on and the way that the protesters are being treated by the police, it's really made a huge impact and effect on me. We had graduation today. We're doing it in, split graduations, whatever. And he actually graduated today. And I talked to him for a long time and said, man, I'm sorry, man. I finally see what you were trying to say. And I may not always agree with the actions that you do or some of the things that you say, but I will always support you. And so I think, and I hope that there are other white coaches like me that have sort of like felt like we were doing the right things, like Blake said, in 80%, because we provide a good lip service, and I've got great black friends and one of my assistants is black, but what am I really doing? And I have a chance to affect and impact white people's perspective of black people. And so, I think I'm very grateful that you guys had me on today. And I will tell you that I've actually spoken with two of my black coach friends across the state, one's in Charlotte, one's in Raleigh. And we're having a meeting on Friday where we're actually going to start a new coaches association that is primary focus is only to not only bring the racial injustice that we're seeing right now into the forefront, but more importantly, keeping it into the forefront, because we've had it in front of us and then we lose sight of it and we lose focus on it. And now, I feel like, I know it's moved me, and I think the nation is turned upside down. And I think that there are other people in the same spot I'm in that want to do something that don't know how to do it. And I can't sit from where I sit in a resort community that's predominantly white and coaching white kids and tell people how to combat racism, because I don't know, but I want to be part of the solution. And it's going to take all of us coming together to form some sort of committee or whatever to try and do things. And so, I may fail, may fall on my face, but we're going to try. My goal is to get one coach signed up in every state and do a clinic for kids and underprivileged kids in those communities by October. We want one clinic, one coach in every state. And if we can do that, we can start to bridge the gap. I've already spoken with the vice president of the North Carolina Police Chiefs Association. He's an African American who I know very well, and he will be the president come January 1. And he's already said, Chad, we're on board, man. You tell me what you can do to help us. And I said, well, and his name's Eddie Buffalo. I said, Buff, I said, what we've been doing ain't working. We've had free clinics where we have cops come in, and that only goes so far. And so, one of my thoughts is, what, let's have a cop clinic where the kids come in and teach. Because what we have to have is the kids in front of the police more than the police in front of the kids. They have to see these kids as the individuals and and get to know them or see them in some kind of level that's not the way they're being perceived right now. So I really appreciate the time. I appreciate my kids. And, there's two people that I really believe got me to where I am right now today. And one is my player. And I'll be glad to give you his stuff later if you want to start following him, because he's still speaking out and he needs role models in his life like you guys. And the other is my own son, who is as colorblind as I've ever seen a kid. I grew up in Eastern North Carolina where, not where I am right now, where there was a lot of racism. And you had two paths to go down, and athletics and sports is the path that took me down, where I had Black teammates, and that changed my perspective. And I'll be honest, I haven't always been perfect, haven't always done the right things. But I've seen where I want to go, and I just need some help to get there. And talking about the police earlier, I thought to myself, the only time I've ever been scared of the police is when I was doing something wrong. When those blue lights came on, that's when I got nervous. And I know now you guys, you see a badge, you get nervous, and all the time, and you haven't done anything. And, so thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
I was just gonna hop in and just share, because I know some people were just sharing about different courses of action. I just want to hop in and then just share some resources. So the first thing I'm going to share, I'm going to drop this clip. It was just because ultimately, like we're talking about, we're trying to identify solutions and trying to see how we all can continue to create effective change. And I saw a conversation between Pastor Stephen Furtick and Pastor John Gray. This is a Caucasian pastor and an African-American pastor. And they sat down, and then towards the end, they actually laid out like a plan of action, like what could we begin to do? And then he laid out a website called Be the Bridge. So that's one link I'm gonna drop in the chat. And then also there was just a few books and also one movie. I was gonna drop those references in the chat. And I just wanted to let you all know about that. The one film is called 13th on Netflix. For everyone who has not seen that, I would just recommend it just because it adds some numbers to perspective, just in regards to the prison system and really talking about that. Then there's a book called White Fragility, White Rage. So you want to talk about race, the new Jim Crow, and how to be an anti-racist. And I'm going to just drop those in the chat, and I just want to let you all know. But if anybody wants further resources, you can reach out to me and I'll put my contact information. But I just wanted to share those resources.
All right, thanks.
This is
Steve
John,
Harden.
the head coach at Truett McCollum University. And Coach Williams, you kind of grabbed my word before I was able to say it, but I know angry, confused, frustrated, those words all been said. And my word to piggyback on Coach Williams was embarrassed. Just utter embarrassment. How white people can treat black people, how whites can treat whites, black can treat black, but almost just embarrassed how humans can treat other human beings, whether it's the case of George Floyd or other cases. And, I did a little research and went on and watched the documentary by Brian Stevenson, who is a lawyer who fights for people on death row. And, some of the stories he's talking about, I'm thinking, okay, I can understand if this is 60, 70, 80 years ago, but they throw the date across the screen and it's 10 or 15 years ago that these things are happening, and just embarrassed that these things can continue to still happen. I know systematic racism is kind of the phrase that everyone uses, and I would almost just go back and say it's just historical racism, and how we haven't figured this out and haven't figured out a way to treat other people better in today's light. You know, I'm at a Christian college, and I'm a committed believer, try to be, and there's two different types of sins, sins of commission and sins of omission. And definitely if we do not speak up, if people do not speak up, that's a sin of omission. And in cases of injustice, I've had it with my own players here, where I've had to really go to bat for them. Believe it or not, it's always been African-American kids. Three kids I have just gone to bat for, who I felt were treated unjustly within my own administration, within our university, and quite frankly, lost all three of them. But it's something I would still go to bat for each and every one of them. Not that they were always in the right, but some of the punishment or some of the things that happened were completely just cases of injustice. And so I know we do allow our guys, and when these things happen, one of the things that I love to do is bring our team together. We're about, on average, we're pretty mixed, 50-50 in terms of white and black. And it's great opportunity for our African-American kids to be able to talk. And we do it in our locker room. Every phone is put away, and we just tell our kids, man, you can say anything that you want within the context of these walls. This is the locker room. You're completely safe. You can say you hate certain people, whatever. And it really opens the white kids' eyes about some of those injustices that our African-American kids face on a day-to-day basis. And so going back, embarrassed is the word that I have. We have a call set up with our team here in a day or two, just same thing, to be able to talk about whatever they want to be able to talk about. And it opens people's eyes.
Coach McKissick, I appreciate you letting me on and just being able to listen and engage and learn for the most part. My word again, just like the fellow guys with the Caucasian guys, we're all about the same on the word, and just embarrassed. That was my first feel, besides just sad and sick, those three things together. I'm the head basketball coach at Lee's McRae. I might have a couple white guys here and there on our team. Coach McKissick saw us play plenty of times. So he knows kind of how we play and how we roll. With just adding on, I don't have much to it other than when you were talking about having a Zoom call. Pretty much the day of, we had multiple Zoom calls where we just had to re-click because I guess I'm too cheap to keep it going. But we had probably about 2.5 to 3 hours worth of Zoom that night. And I asked the same question, coaches, that a couple of you guys, especially Caucasian, ask, and just that what more, like I'm embarrassed at myself because I feel like I do a lot, and then learning how much less I really do, and that's a hit to my heart and us being privileged, and just simple things of having in our Zoom call, we had a couple of fathers along on there. One of them is a big time captain in the military, and the other one is a sergeant in Charlotte as a police officer, and both of them are African-American fathers as well. And just listening to them talk, and then the youth talk as well on our team. Like I said, it's sad. It's inspiring for the future, and I think with guys going. But just for my point guard to tell me that'll be a senior this year, that was a freshman. Just that he can't he can't fix it, or his race can't fix it. That it needs to be me, and those things. I mean, they hit home. They hit home a lot on how much more that we need to do. And I just appreciate all the coaches that's been talking. I'm sad that it gets to this point, that this had to happen again, and now for it to start going strong, as it always should never be this way. But I'm glad that we're doing things like this, and we're trying to figure out small ways to make sure that it goes, that we're doing a better job for the future. And just the example of the like I said with the dad, with one of the dads that's in Charlotte, explaining what to do to all our guys in certain situations, and just listening to each player of mine to say what somebody in their family told them how to handle, anytime being involved with an officer or any of those kind of things at police or any, though, that part is the privileged part of us Caucasian, white, whatever you want to say of us, that we've never, that hit home to me not telling my 3 kids, explain to them how to handle those situations. And not only those situations, on just multiple situations that you had to be encountered with, and those kind of things. And that is 100% privileged part of stuff that should not be there. And I think that probably still hits me the most home on just that. We've just got to get better overall at seeing that. And I'll leave it because I'm loving listening to everybody else. And I just wanted to just get on and say that coaches at all the levels that we have as head coaches, and that we're trying to make sure that we do better. And we're also, I guess my best thing that I asked my players, and I left them with this, is how do we get back to being in the childlike eyes, like for society, and the child eyes of, I'm actually sitting in my 6-year-old son's room, and you can see behind me it's LeBron, Jordan, and Kobe, up in the room. That's his idols. That's stuff that he looks up to. Little Caucasian white boy that'll probably never be able to do remotely those kind of things. And how do we see out of children's just pure heart eyes as society? If we could just get to that point, we know the world would be a much better place.
Thank you, Coach. I got one person who wants to speak before we move to our last point, which will just be an open-ended, question. You ask, we answer. You as in one coach to the next, and that's Pastor Adams. Says he won't get something before he gets off.
Hey guys, how you doing? My name's Anthony Adams. I'm the senior youth pastor at World Changes Church International in College Park, Georgia. I want to say to the coach that just spoke, as far as your son, just keep being present. It's racism is something that's more taught than caught. So you just keep being present and, making sure that you be that example in front of him, and he'll be fine, man. A lot of kids, even with Generation Z, I have a 18-year-old, I have a 17-year-old, I have a 15-year-old, and then I have a 13-year-old daughter. The other 3 are boys. And they hadn't experienced racism outside of what they've seen on social media, which is the new platform for racism. That's mainly because of how I've raised them to be, as far as being respectable and not giving people a reason. And I've taught them to operate with the level of excellence. So I wanted to say that. But my main point that I want to pour into the heart of everyone on this call is that this isn't a physical thing. I don't want us to be so fruit driven that we miss the root of a thing. Okay. And when I say that, when I say fruit, what happened to George Floyd was the fruit. The root of it is racism, hatred, division, confusion. It's a spiritual warfare is my point. And I think a lot of times we negate that and we try to operate from our emotional part of us. And we lose sight of the fact that these things have always been here. They're just getting a little bit more attention now. But the same things that, I preach every Sunday, every Wednesday, every Thursday, I'm pouring out. We're talking about having a relationship with God, knowing God, the joy of the Lord is your strength, overcoming depression. You see, when 3 months from now, when this dies down, and the only reason I say that is because I marched 900 students when Mike Brown was killed, and there wasn't no video for that. But I literally marched 900 students from McNair Middle School up into our building, and we taught them how to peacefully protest. The point that I'm making is, if we don't get a harness over our emotions and stop being moved by what we see and start owning what we know as far as who we are, we're children of God. And God is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. Nothing about how he operates has changed just because George Floyd died. Nothing has changed as far as his power. But I do feel like things have changed as far as our belief when it comes to him. All of your coaches, so you know more than anybody as far as your players are concerned. And if you haven't shared this with them, you need to. Panic makes you forget what you know. Okay? So as soon as that tip-off comes and you start and the game starts, it's different from practice. Panic makes you forget even the fundamental things. So you got to be mindful of that. When I watched that video of George Floyd being murdered, there was anger on the inside of me as a pastor. Hatred tried to rise up on the inside of me as a pastor. Division tried to rise up on the inside of me as a pastor. But one of the things that I had to be reminded of is, wait a minute, I'm tripping. That's not me. I have to renew my mind. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So once I got in that word, I started praying. And once I started praying, it wasn't just me talking. When you pray, you speak to God and he speaks back. When he gives you, and he will give you what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. When you get to a point when your relationship with God is at the forefront of any relationship that you have, even with your wife, even with your mama, my relationship with God is key and instrumental to me because I know how I am without him. Without him, I'm an emotional wreck. Without him, I'm broken. Without him, I don't know what to do. So I keep him at the forefront. And one of the things that he gave me as I was angry, as I was weak, when I'm weak, he's strong. And I pull from that strength. What he shared with me was he brought me back to when I was in the 8th grade. All right, now follow me. When I was in the 8th grade, I hated math, okay? And every time the teacher would say a phrase like exponents and, going over different math terms that I didn't understand, I would react a certain way, or I would, make fun of the teacher or try to divert that energy by acting out erratically. And I did that because I didn't want anybody in the class to know that I didn't understand the math, okay? So I'm sitting there and I'm praying. I'm like, Lord, well, why'd you bring that to me? I thought I got over that part. Am I still broken from when I was in the 8th grade? And he was like, no, hear me out. This is a real conversation that I'm having with God. He said, son, kids these days, when you start talking about the needful things, tap out because they don't understand. I said, well, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to do what the school did for you. What the school did for me was they created tutors and put me on a one-on-one thing until I was brought up to the level where the rest of the class was. Well, when it comes to legislation, when it comes to the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the caucus, the senators, what do? Superior Court judges and voting and census and why the importance of census. Kids tap out because they don't understand and they like, I already got to learn enough in school. I'm not trying to learn any more stuff. What he called me to do in this time as it pertains to this, to bring about change, he said, you have to make politics relatable and cool so that they understand. There's no problem with being an athlete, or there's no problem with most of our kids want to be athletes and most of our kids want to be entertainers and different things like that. But we have to start pushing the narrative of we need more judges. We need more lawyers. We need more senators. We need more people that are on the field that can bring about change from the inside. But we also need them to know the power of legislation and how that works. And I begin to say, yes, sir, I got you. I understand that. But I feel like what happens is when there is no guidance and when everything is so fruit driven, you become a bunch of emotional people that make a lot of noise and get no results. We have to get to the root of this thing. Well, how do you get to the root of this thing? Well, we speak, life and death is in the power of the tongue. We have the ability to come out of our mouths and say, Satan, I bind you and every demonic attack that you have over this nation. I bind the spirit of racism. I bind the spirit of hatred. I bind the spirit of division. And you begin to say those things because that's what kings and queens do. And I don't want us to be so shocked about all of the things that are happening because they truly do happen every day. However, when it comes down to what are we going to do to change it, the blueprint has been the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. It's Jesus. That's my opinion. I'm not just saying that because I'm a pastor, because I'm also a man who faced life in prison. I'm also a man who dropped out of high school in the 10th grade. I'm also a man who pimped women. I'm also a man who did a whole bunch of kicking in doors and robbing people and did all of those things too. So I'm talking to you from a place of, I know Jesus is real. I'm not saying this because I grew up a preacher. No, I grew up in College Park, Georgia on Godby Road, and I've robbed more people than I'd like to count. But God saved me and brought me out of that pit of despair. And I know he's the answer because I have a personal, intimate relationship with him. So I want to encourage you coaches, when those young men are in front of you and you feel like you don't know what to do, God will give you wisdom. Wisdom is knowing what to do when you don't know what to do. And God will give you that wisdom, but keep him at the forefront of your mind. And I don't want us to act like all of these things aren't things that the Bible hadn't already warned us about. James 3:16 says, where there's envy and where there's strife, there's every evil work of the enemy. And that's what's happening right now. And we'd be remiss to sit back and just highlight the fruit instead of attacking the root. That's pretty much all I had to say.
All right, thank you, Coach. We're gonna let Coach James come in, but this is the last. We'll go for about 10 more minutes, basically on where do we go from here, and that's how we'll close it up, and we'll kind of let it be an open-ended conversation, a quick one, 30 seconds here, there. Hopefully we can hear from everybody that's on the panel, just speaking to the nation that's watching about where do we go from here. And what I would say is that hopefully we can kind of create, which I see Corey Black in the comments, kind of create maybe a buddy system of, hey, Coach, what do I do? How do I handle this situation? Because I don't know. And, I think it's good for guys like Keith. Like I said, Keith goes to my church and, I watch him grow up. It's good that he can see white guys that are not racist. That, if you saw him on the street, he probably would, like, I don't know about that guy. But once you hear him speak, it is what it is. And no doubt, if, they see me or they see Huff or they see Pastor Adams and not know who they are, it's pretty, we fit the description. So maybe we can kind of create, like he said, connect the dots. But we'll let Coach come up and he'll start that conversation off. And I'll put a 10-minute timer on and we'll get off of here.
Pastor Adams took all the thunder that I was going to bring. I was kind of waiting for question number 4, but there's a quote by Thomas Aquinas, and it says, when fear is excessive, it can make many a man despair, which kind of led me down a rabbit trail of 2 Corinthians 4, verses 8-9. And I say this to the young people about what Pastor Adams said. This is not new. We're not fighting the physical. And Paul speaking to the church in Corinth, and he says, we're experiencing trouble on every side, but we are not crushed. We are perplexed, but we are not driven to despair. We are persecuted, but we are not abandoned. We are knocked down, but not destroyed. Always carrying around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be made visible in our body. And to the young people, I really want to speak, and I've been kind of struggling with what I'm gonna say. And anger and everything that everybody expressed on the call has kind of been welling up over me over the past 30 some odd years that I've been studying about the plight of African Americans in our country. But the thing that God wanted to impress upon me was hope. And I say that to guys like Keith and to Thomas and to Emmanuel, hope. like you gotta have, because if you don't, the despair is gonna lead you to a dark place. And that's essentially the message that I want to bring up about how we going forward. Me personally, I happen to work for Coach Jesse McMillan, who's on the call, and I've seen him personally. And the word I think somebody used earlier was relationships. And as a young head coach, I learned like from him the importance of developing relationships with your players so that you're able to impact their lives. And so I was just, as I've been trying to just deal the last couple days, just like what I'm gonna tell my team, because I haven't spoken with my guys yet because I know what to say, but we'll have a meeting tomorrow. And I think the thing that came up the most was listen. And we got an opportunity to listen to Keith, and we got a lot opportunity to listen to Coach Williams. We got a lot opportunity to listen to Coach Udonis. And the thing that I think now we have to understand is once we gather all this information, the most important thing that we have to do is develop relationships. The NAACP was started in 1909, by 1907 by W.E.B. Du Bois, another white American. The path to reconciliation is through relationship. And I think Dr. King had a quote where he was like, if you don't listen to each other, we don't have an understanding. So I think where we go from here is like, as opposed to having a dialogue, which I think is important, we have to come to the table and build relationships. Like Jesus was impactful because he had life on life application with people he wasn't supposed to deal with. And I think that happens now more than anything else. We need to have life on life application with our white brothers, with our Spanish brothers, with our Asian brothers, just to understand each other. But that takes listening. That takes lowering your defenses a little bit. It takes handling your anger to be able to have these conversations. And that's a real mature thing to do. And the second thing that I would add is, this goes back to the PTSD. We need to encourage African-American brothers to have counseling. We need to encourage counseling to our players so that they're able to communicate and talk to third parties about the things that they deal with and things that they see. Because there's ongoing thing, as Mondre talked about earlier, about things he didn't even tell his mom. We suffer a lot in silence. And mental health is a very huge thing that I'm advocating with my players, just because I know there's things that they may not want to tell me that they struggle with. So those are the two things that I would add to the discussion, not to be long-winded, is please have hope to all my young people. And the second thing is make sure we're taking care of our athletes' mental health. This generation is, all they know is the screen. All they know is this is this generation that don't know anything outside of phones and televisions and things like that. And those things desensitize us. And so I would just encourage all my coaches on this call, promote mental health, and please have hope, guys. Have hope, because this not gonna last. And we've been fighting for a long time, but we fight better together than separate. So.
I think that's definitely huge. What you just said, Coach. Definitely the relationship piece. You know, you speaking as a player right now. You know, I think that's very important for us as coaches. You know, not only our Caucasian fellow coaches, but also as you know, Black coaches, having those conversations with you know, with our program, you know, as well. You know, we have to hold ourselves accountable as well. You know, on what we must do to help our kids, and like Coach said earlier, like the PTSD, like that is something serious. You know, even for me as an adult, you know, you sometimes in certain situations and maybe you know, and I was telling a young person the other day, for example, we're getting pulled over by the police because of what's so common that happens in the Black community with police officers. You're already uptight. You're already pissed off. Why did you stop me? So I think it's, you know, and that comes, you know, people might not believe it, but I definitely believe in that, the PTSD. I think that it does definitely affect our kids, affect how they handle themselves, affect their anger, and especially with them being able to talk, having those open door policies where they're able to come talk, they're able to vent and really say how they feel without having to censor how they feel, because at the end of the day, these kids have so much other things that's going on in their life outside of sports, what we want them to do. So we got to open that up for them and just try to be that bridge for them in regular day life, what they go through, as well as peer pressure and being picked on and so on. As like Coach was saying earlier, in school, they react, they act out in certain ways because of things that they're not comfortable, they're not able to express themselves and get out their frustration and so on, how they feel. And for the coach's standpoint, I think it's very important, Coach James, you pretty much like nailed everything with us coming together, as a coaching community and having that application of sisterhood, and brotherhood, and holding each other accountable there, and really pushing this movement forward. Like I can't say enough, Coach Anthony, thanks so much for doing this. Like it was I would use the terminology of brave. Not too many people want to reach out to their community, you're in the coaching community, and pull this in and be the one to have and spark this conversation. And I think what you have done here today is going to lead us all, this platform that you saw here is going to open up us having, conversations outside of what you have did here today. So I really appreciate you, and thank you so much for having me on. And all you guys, if you guys ever need anything, I am your sister in love. I don't care what your color is, race, religion, it doesn't matter. We all here, we all God kids. That's how I feel about it.
Cabral Huff, Holy Innocents, Episcopal School. It's just been great to sit back and listen to everyone's thoughts and how we change this. And it's funny because I had some things written down when it talked about how do we change things. And I think Pastor said the first one, it starts with God, and then it goes to hope. And then after we have hope, we have to have some kind of plan of what's our next step. And the next step is not just the dialogue that we have here, because that has to keep going. It has to be the accountability and relationships we have here as coaches so we can hold each other accountable. But it's that dialogue and relationship that we got to have with our players. So when you have that dialogue with your players, it may be a lot more listening than it is talking. It may be a lot more asking them, how do you feel? Or what do you feel about it? And they may not be able to express it the way you feel they should express it, but just listen to understand them, understand where they're coming from. And then it kind of goes back to what we said earlier. And I took a quote down here that I wanted to share. It says, when we give something our full attention, then change can happen. If we continue to give making a change to racism in America our full attention, then we can affect change. And we do that by not being silent, because silence creates a vacuum. And nobody, black, white, nobody's gonna know the best words to say. I didn't know the best words to say to my team, which is a mixed team. But we can choose to fill the void by caring, by listening, encouraging, and serving someone other than ourselves every day. And when you choose words and actions of kindness, empathy, and love, we can begin to make change. And then out of that, let's be honest with each other and say, we got to get our butts out there and vote. And I don't mean just for a presidential election. I mean, we got to be honest with ourselves and say there are many times we haven't voted in an election that wasn't in November. And those are the elections that really matter, that create change in this world, whether you believe it or not. And I know young people say, well, we've been voting for years. Well, unfortunately, we haven't voted when it matters a lot of times. And you can go look up the numbers and see when you go vote in the non-presidential elections what the percentage of voters are. That would be my chance and my stance to everyone today. Let's go vote. Let's get our players that can vote, let's get them registered to vote. And maybe let's get in our communities and start a voter registration drive. And that's where I'll leave my comment for today.
I'm gonna go ahead and jump in, and piggyback off of Coach Huff. I'm gonna start off with a scripture. Mark 12:31 states, "Love thy neighbor as thyself." And I feel that, especially working under the sports information department at Columbus State, I might not be a coach, but it almost feels that I have to have a certain connection with the student athletes, because we're working with students of all different races, ethnicities, and so forth and so on. So it's important for us to have this dialogue with our students, because we never know what they could be going through, especially in their dorms, on the court, on the field, whatever sport they could be playing. It's important for us to have this dialogue with them, because it's just what we need. I mean, they're away from home, so they need that family feel, and to know that they're loved and they're embraced, and you're not alone, because we're here for you. We're almost like a support team for these student athletes. And so as far as it goes for a plan of action, we if any of y'all heard what Killer Mike's comments was on Channel 2 Action News last week, he stated that we need to be organized, and we need to actually know what we're bringing ourselves into, and that's destroying the polls. We have to destroy the polls in November. And lucky for my generation, 2018, the classes of 2018 and 2019 that just recently graduated, they're able to vote this year. And I feel that my generation will be the pretty much the catalyst and the difference makers within this election, because they know now, and they're woke, and they see what's going on in today's society. So if need be, if I have to pay for Ubers, Lyfts, whatever needs to be done to get my generation out to vote, I want this as probably as bad as the next person. We need to get out and vote. It's so imperative that we take part in this year's election. So,
all right, I appreciate it, and I'm going to close this out. I'll just leave you something to think about. And one of my life scriptures, Luke 12:48, says, "But the one who does not know and does things deserving punishment will be beaten with few blows. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much will be asked." What I'll leave you with is, now you can no longer say that you don't know. So what are you going to do with this information? It's just a conversation. It's just a start, but you know now. On the black side, you know. On the white side, you know. Now we got to come together, and you have to decide what you're going to do now that you know. Y'all be blessed. Have a great time. Go back to your families, and I hope this has been, helpful to somebody. If it has, make sure you don't leave a comment, share it, do whatever you need to do.
Thanks for having us, Coach.
Appreciate you, Coach.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you. Everybody stay safe.